That's awesome.
You guys, so last couple of weeks, or actually last couple of months really, we've been talking a lot about homelessness. We've been talking about stuff going on the border, the immigration crisis, a lot of other social justice issues. But now we want to focus on more like the kid angle, right? And we want to focus a little bit more on talking to them about how to give back, how to help situations like this.
Right, because even for adults, it's hard to figure out what to do. So joining us now is Stephanie Ellis-Smith, and she is a chartered advisor in philanthropy. I love this. She's with Phila Engaged.
Yeah.
And first of all, Phila has this beautiful meaning. I didn't know how to say it. Tell us about that.
Thank you. So Phila essentially is the Greek root for love.
Okay.
And it's a love of humanity. It's a love of people. And that is the root of philanthropy. And that's the same whether you're giving money or time or your abilities to causes.
I think also giving back to your community is something you learn to appreciate as you get older, right? And you understand how life works. But you have these easy processes of how to introduce this to our kiddos, because that can be sometimes a little bit more difficult when you're like, at what age should I start them giving back and volunteering time? What would you suggest on that?
Well, I like to say that the first time you hear your child say, mine, it's time to start talking about giving back.
That's a good one.
Because that means they understand what's theirs, and then perhaps they will then, by extension, understand that someone else may need something as well.
Wow. Okay, so you say your first tip for talking to our kids has to do with volunteering together. So tell us about that.
Right. So volunteering together, it's whether you decide to adopt a family at the holidays or for a back-to-school program, doing work at a food bank or a shelter, but having a family experience together cements that value within your family as something that is valuable and as something is important. And as we know, we can talk and talk and talk, but when you do something physically and put your body in a space with children, you're expressing a value in a way that is very, very meaningful that they remember, I think, over time.
That's good. And another one you have here, we talk about finances and children all the time. Do you give your kids allowance? How does it work? And you have something here called the 3-tiered allowance?
Yeah, it's a concept of 3-tiered allowance, and there's an organization called Moonjar who they basically actually have a little paper allowance bin, and you have 3 sections to it. One is for savings, one is for spending, and one is for charity. And your own family or your children can make their own allocations, whether you want a third, a third, a third, or however you want to do it. But again, you're inculcating this idea that every time you get something, there's some that you want to set aside for yourself for the future, maybe a treat now, but then always including giving to others when you get something.
That's very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
And number 3, this is the tough one, I think, for some of us.
It can be.
Model the behavior
you expect to
More
see.
is taught than taught, they say, right?
That's right. Walk the walk.
Yep.
And more than talk the talk. And it's hard. I mean, we're busy. There's a lot going on, but there's more than one way to do that. I mean, we all have a lot going on, but when we're watching the news and we're seeing the things at the border or homelessness, and you had mentioned about, your children and seeing homelessness on the street, when there's tragedies or events, look for the helpers and talk about that. Be the one who is actually giving help. And it doesn't always mean something that it has to be incredibly organized or a part of a larger organization. It's helping. And it's being a part of the community and giving of yourself. And children notice that.
Why is that good for a kid's soul to give and think of someone other than themselves? What's the value in that you see?
I think there's tremendous value, and I would even take it a step further and say it's not just good for kids, it's good for all of us. It feels good to give. And it just as it feels good to receive, oftentimes, sometimes I think it may feel even a little bit better to give because you're giving of yourself, and I think it activates a place in your brain that you feel, it's the altruism bit, and we all have it. And when you give, you want to give more, and you feel good, and you feel a part of something. And that's extremely valuable.
So good. Thank you so much. I
Thank
remember
you.
one advice I got from this elderly gentleman when I was a kid. He was like, I never quite made it in life. I was always trying to struggle and struggle and struggle, and I learned the more I gave, the more that was coming back to me, and that's how I finally made it. I was like, whoa, that's great advice.
Yeah, my heart feels all full. All right, so Stephanie Ellis-Smith with Phila Engaged, and you help people figure out how to give with the organization.
Time and money.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll send it back to Chris and Michelle.
Yeah, we got
was
some
great.
text messages coming in. A lot of reaction on the wiener dogs. So clearly that's popular. If you missed it, come back tomorrow. We're going to have local royalty join us, Anderson Pooper. But we're also getting a lot of reaction to the Carrie in the Hive who has that
Poor
broken
Carrie.
TV. 2 broken TVs in just a couple of months. Take a look at this one. My stepson took a hammer to our fish tank. He was about 3. Oops. My brother was practicing his golf swing at 16. Not our TV, 1960s type. He had to pay for it from his berry picking money. Lesson learned. And then why are they playing with balls in the house? Period, maybe. That's my down south race.
Oh, Angela. Did you text that in?
Boy, yeah.
Thank you for your text, though. Do you notice that those 2 examples were boys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oops.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
having a boy, so we'll see.
Mini Lee will come out with like all proper manners.
We'll get him plastic bags.
I'll give him everything
Oh, gosh.
Nerf. Don't worry. It'll all be sponges. You're fine.